Hey, what's up? My name's Alea. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be talking about winter book recommendations, and I have 5 different categories I want to talk to you about. So I have If You Give a Jock a Cookie, Christmas with a Monster, Cozy and Soul Nourishing, Dead Body in the Snow, All I Want for Christmas is a Duke, and Ho Ho Hallmark. And I'm going to be recommending a bunch of different books. So we've got some contemporary Christmas romances, we've got some historical romances, monster romances, some spooky books set in the winter, some cozy fantasy novels that I think would be perfect for this time of year. So without any further ado, let's get into the recommendations. So the first category is If You Give a Jock a Cookie. So these are winter romances that have to do with sports. And so the first one I wanted to recommend is called Snowed In with a Player. This is one that I read last year during the Christmas season. And we're following this woman who comes home from college, and she's driving home with her twin sister, and they decide that they're going to go and hang out for the weekend at her parents' cabin, and they're going to hang out, watch Christmas movies and bake cookies or whatever. But when they get there, their older brother is there with his entire football team. And one of the guys who's there and is on the team is this guy named Teddy, who happens to be their brother's best friend. And one of the twins has had a secret crush on him for a really long time, and then one thing leads to another, and the two of them end up getting snowed in alone at this cabin together, and they end up baking cookies and getting to know each other, and things get a little bit spicy, and they fall for each other, and it's really, really sweet. And then the next one I want to talk about is called Collide. So this is a new one that just came out. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and it's a hockey romance, which I've never read before. Some of these are ones that are on my TBR, some of these are ones that I have read, and so this is one that's on my TBR, and it's following this woman who's in college, and she is basically given this ultimatum by her professor that she has to participate in some research. And meanwhile, on the college hockey team, the hockey team does some sketchy shit, and they're kind of in hot water with their coach, and so their coach tells the captain of the hockey team that he has to partake in this research. And so the two kind of get thrown together for this research paper project, and they really butt heads, and it sounds like they have a really good hate to love romance going on, and so I'm excited to get to that one. So the next one I have is called Shut Out, and it's another hockey romance, and we're following this woman who is in college, and she's in her sophomore year, and she ends up having to move in with her brother, and turns out he lives with 2 of his other roommates who are also on the hockey team. And she walks in the front door, and she's got all of her shit, she's ready to move in, and she's kind of bummed about it because she's like, great, I have to live with all these stinky boys and their gross stinky hockey gear, and they're gonna eat all the food, and there's gonna be women coming in for hookups, and it's gonna be a mess. She walks in, and one of the guys who he's living with happens to be this guy named Hades, who's super hot, and he has tattoos and stuff, and they had a one-night stand on Halloween, and now they're roommates. And so I think things kind of go from there. This is one I've heard really good things about. I know Christy from Christy Reads a Lot gave it 5 stars, and honestly, she's like the romance queen. So if Christy says it's good, I'm gonna read it. And I thought this would be a good place to start with hockey romances, so I really want to get to that one. I thought that would be a really good one for winter. And then the next category I have is called Christmas with a Monster. So these are holiday winter monster romances that I think look really cool. And I have 2 of them, and they're both December releases that are coming out really soon. So the first one is called Wed to Jack Frost, and this is what I'm really excited about. It's about this guy who's Jack Frost, and he gets a little tipsy at the Yuletide party, and he ends up submitting his name to this monster matchmaking service, and he gets matched that night with this woman, and he's too drunk to realize what happens before he can take out his match. And basically this matchmaking service matches you up with your soulmate, and so he gets matched with this woman, and he goes to the temple to meet her, and they have some serious chemistry going on, and she kind of gives him a run for his money, and it looks really, really good. I'm really intrigued to see what this is all about. It's also part of a monster romance series, and I'm really excited to get to it. And then the next one is called Snow Lights and Monster Nights, and this one is a monster romance anthology, and I think some of the authors in here are ones I've read before. So Wendy Go is in here, Catherine Moon, who also wrote an orc romance that I've been wanting to get to. And so anyways, this collection looks really, really fun. I love the cover. It's giving I went on a snowshoe trip in the Appalachian Mountains and then ended up hooking up with a Yeti in his cave, and that's kind of just exactly what I want this winter. And so I thought this looked really cute. And it's also on Kindle Unlimited. And then the next category I want to talk to you about is called Cozy and Soul Nourishing. So I know during the winter time it can be very stressful with the holidays and everything, and it's seasonal depression season. So these are the books for you. These are perfect for, you know, if you're having a little bit of a rough time this winter, or if you are stuck in a house with all of your extended family during the holidays and they're driving you insane. These are the books you should read. So the first one I wanted to recommend is a middle grade fantasy, and it's called Nevermore: The Trials of Morgan Crow. This is a whole series, and I read the first 3 books. Those are the only books that have been released, and I absolutely loved all of them this year. They're definitely some of my best books I've read this year. And this is a fantasy following this young girl named Morgan, who's like 12 years old, and she was born on this day called Eventide, and it's said that all the kids who are born on Eventide will die at midnight on their 11th birthday, and she is basically just like awaiting her fate. Her dad is horrible to her. She has an awful stepmom. She lives in this like old manor house, and people are really scared of her, and they blame her for everything that goes wrong in this town, and everybody just hates her and they're awful to her. And then right before her birthday hits, this magical man comes to her house, and his name is Jupiter North, and he basically says, hey, if you want to live, come with me. And so she escapes from her town with Jupiter North through the magical clock face, and he takes her away to this world called Nevermore, where there are magical people, and she realizes that she might have some powers that she didn't know she had, and she gets sucked into participating in these magical trials and going to a magic school, and it's really, really cool. It's a really wonderful series. It has a lot of found family elements in here. There's some really interesting characters that have all kinds of different magical abilities, which are really interesting. There's a giant magical talking cat in here named Finestra, who's amazing. It's really, really badass. It's fun. It's a perfect book to read if you're looking for some escapism, or if you just really want a cozy fantasy to read this winter. And there's also some really cool holiday vibes in here too, because they do a big Christmas celebration every year, and so you get to see what happens with that. They decorate the whole town. They have this whole night where Saint Nick and the Yule Queen like duel with their like Christmas magic, and it's really, really fun. It's beautiful. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. And then the next one I wanted to recommend is another one of my very favorite series of all time. And this is a series that I always go to if I'm kind of like feeling down, which might seem a little counterintuitive because it's I Hate Fairyland by Scotty Young. So this is a graphic novel series, and I love this series because we're following this girl named Gertrude. And when Gertrude was a kid, she wanted to escape to a magical land. And this portal opens up in her bedroom floor, and she gets sucked into Fairyland. And in theory, Fairyland is supposed to be this magical place where kids go and they meet all these different magical creatures, and then they go on a little journey and they find the key to their door that takes them back to the human world. Well, Gertrude has been in this world for many years, and she's never found the key, and so she's never been able to go home. And so she's basically stuck in Fairyland, and now it's been many years later, and she's basically a grown woman, like in her 30s, stuck in her adolescent child body in this Fairyland, and she has gone absolutely apeshit feral, and she is basically just started running around like killing people and blowing stuff up and just being like a general menace to society. And I love Gertrude. She is hilarious. And then she also has this friend Larry, who is this little fly, and she and Larry have like the best banter, and it's hilarious. And I just love this series. It's so funny, it's snarky, it has some of the most stunning art I've ever seen. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's written and drawn by Scotty Young, who's an absolute king, I would just like to say. And I really love all of his graphic novels. I think they're really cool. This series has a lot of like gore and action and fight scenes and magic and friendship and all kinds of different things. And it's really, really incredible. And I highly recommend it. It's also just like a really funny pick-me-up sort of read if you're feeling down. So I highly recommend this. And then I also wanted to recommend another middle grade, and it's called Ember and the Ice Dragons. So this is one that's on my TBR. I thought it would be a perfect recommendation for winter. We're following this young girl who's 12 years old, and she's a fire dragon, and her family put a spell on her to make her look like a human. And so she has been kind of trying to like deal with her dragon abilities, but she is in this human form, but her magic is starting to come out. So like sometimes she'll just burst into flames, or her wings will like come out of her back. And so her family sends her away to go and live with her aunt in Antarctica. And in Antarctica, they have these ice dragons. And apparently there's this annual event there where they hunt the ice dragons. And there's like dragon hunters and stuff. And so she decides that she doesn't like that and that she wants to help save the ice dragons so they don't go extinct. And so she teams up with some other friends and tries to go and save the ice dragons. And it looks really, really cute. I was thinking this would be good if you're looking for something kind of cozy fantasy vibes to read this winter. Or maybe if you are, dealing with a book hangover after reading Iron Flame, and maybe you want some more dragons, but you also want some winter vibes. So I was thinking this would be the perfect little read for that. And then the next category I have is called Dead Body in the Snow. So these are ones that are kind of like spooky winter reads. And if you have any recommendations for that kind of vibe, let me know in the comments because I'm looking for more. But I have a couple. So I have one called Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. And this is one that I've been hearing really, really good things about. I think Jordaline from Jordaline Reads read this recently for her Darcy Coates vlog, and I thought it sounded really, really cool. Basically, it's about these people who go on this trip, and I think it's a bunch of young people that go up into the mountains in the winter to go on this, extravagant trip, and then they get to this cabin where they're staying, and it's really isolated. They don't really have power or anything. They're kind of just hanging out, and then one by one, people start going missing. And the group begins to find the dead bodies of their companions in the woods. And from what I've heard, it's pretty gruesome. We're talking dead bodies in the trees. We're talking heads on spikes, maybe, creepy, weird shit. And they realize that one of the people in the group is a killer. So that's cool. And I just thought that sounded really interesting. And I really like the idea of there being a serial killer in this isolated cabin in the forest, just picking people off one by one, and they have to try and figure out who it is before everybody ends up dead. And then the next one I want to talk about is one that I read a while ago and really, really enjoyed, but it's set in the winter. And so I thought I would recommend it to you today, and it's called The House on Vesper Sands by Periac O'Donnell. So this is one that is a kind of a murder mystery, and it also has some light kind of magical-ish elements to it as well. So we're following this man we're following two people. We're following this young man, and we're also following this inspector named Inspector Cutter. He and this man, Gideon Bliss, are on a hunt because there has been this recent case where women have been disappearing in this town in England, and they find this woman's body, and it looks like she's jumped out a window, but she has a message sewn into her arm with red thread. And the whole thing takes place on a wintry night, and it is one of the best mysteries I've ever read. It's wonderful. Periac O'Donnell's writing is so lyrical and beautiful, and the dynamic between the inspector and Gideon Bliss is so funny, because Gideon Bliss is this college kid who's come home, and he goes to visit his uncle, and he's supposed to stay with him, and he goes to his uncle's house. His uncle's not there, and he thinks that his uncle's disappearance has something to do with the missing girls, and so he and the inspector team up to try and figure out what's going on. And there's also this woman that Gideon Bliss is really into, and they've kind of been not dating, but he's had a crush on her for a long time, and she is also gone missing. And so he has a lot of skin in the game, and he is trying to help with this investigation, but he's really young, and he's kind of got Labrador Retriever energy. And Inspector Cutter is this very hard-nosed, straight-laced detective guy, and their dynamic is really funny to watch. And this also has some queer rep in it as well, so I highly recommend this if you're looking for something well-written and cozy and captivating to read this winter. And then next up, I have some other books I want to talk to you about, and I'm calling the category All I Want for Christmas is a Duke, but basically it's winter historical romances. And so I have a few that I think would be perfect for this season. So one is one that I just found at a used bookstore the other day, and it's called Duchess by Night by Eloisa James. This is one I haven't heard anybody else talk about, but it's set in December, and we're following this young woman named Harriet, and she is tired of her responsibilities. She's sick and tired of the little London tea party vibe, and she wants to go somewhere where she can just like unleash some wild desires that she has. And so she finds out that there's this little soiree going on that's hosted by this man called Lord Strange. And so she decides that she wants to go and partake. However, she's worried about her reputation. So she pulls a little Mulan and she decides to dress up like a man and put on a little fake beard moment and go to the soiree and have a fun, fresh time. But she goes, and this Lord Strange guy discovers that she is actually, in fact, not a man, but a very beautiful woman. And things kind of go from there. And I just like the idea of this girl kind of pulling a Mulan just so that she can like go to this dope party. And then having like the lord of the house figure out that she's actually a woman and that she's unmarried, and that she's, you know, looking for a little spice, a little zest, you might say, in her life. So I would recommend this if you're looking for something that's set in the winter time. And then I also have another historical romance that I read last winter that I really, really liked. And it's called The Scandalous Ladies of London, the Countess by Sophie Jordan. And this is one that I read as an ARC. And the second book is coming out very soon in 2024. And it's one of my most anticipated releases of the next year because I absolutely adored this book when I read it. So we're following this lady named Lady Gertrude, and she goes by True. And she is married to this man who is one of the most toxic assholes I've ever had the misfortune of reading about. He treats her like shit. He openly cheats on her all the time. He spends all of her money, and he totally neglects their kids. And she hates him, but she's kind of stuck in this marriage, and she can't really do anything about it. And so she's kind of just been like avoiding him at all costs. And they live separately and whatever. And then her daughter, Cordelia, is coming of age and is about to come out in society, and her shitty husband wants to control who Cordelia marries because he is a greedy little wiener, and he wants Cordelia to marry like the richest man possible so that he can have more money. And True is like, no, like, I want my daughter to marry for love. Like, I'm stuck in this awful loveless marriage and I don't want that for her. And he doesn't give a shit about what his wife or his daughter wants. And so True finally kind of wakes up a little bit and is like, you know what? I'm sick of this man. I want what's best for my daughter and I'm going to fight for it. And so she starts kind of like trying to help her daughter and encouraging her to marry for love and that kind of thing. And meanwhile, her husband finds this man named Jasper Thorne, who is very wealthy. He is like independently wealthy. He's an entrepreneur, and he has just kind of like appeared. He's got that new money energy. And True's husband is like, this Jasper Thorne guy seems like the perfect man to marry my daughter. And so he starts bringing Jasper around and trying to hook him up and whatever. And one thing leads to another. And True and Jasper Thorne end up having a relationship. And I just love the premise that a married woman would have an affair with one of her daughter's suitors. It's so iconic. There's so much good banter between True and Jasper. Jasper is a spicy man, and I love him. He's an absolute king. And they have a very saucy romance, very forbidden, very like sneaking around in the garden, smooching against the trellis energy, if you're into that. And it's absolutely wonderful. I loved it. I thought it was so interesting to see what was going to happen and how they were going to make this relationship happen, or if they could. And it's wonderful. And I highly recommend it if you're looking for a historical romance to read this winter. And then the last category I have, I'm calling Ho Ho Hallmark. So basically it's all of the like rom-com contemporary Christmas stories. And so I have a few that I didn't include in my Winter TBR. I'll also link my Winter TBR down below in case you want to check that out, because all of these books are ones that I'm also really excited about this winter. But if you're looking for extra recommendations or more options of things to read, all of the ones that I mentioned in my TBR video are completely different from this list. So basically you get two lists. So I'll leave that link down below in case you want to check it out. So the next one I wanted to recommend is called If You Give a Grump a Holiday Wish List. So this is one that I've been hearing really good things about. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, and we're following this woman who is going home for the holidays, and basically she has this very tyrannical boss. So he basically says, no, I'll come with you for the holidays because I want to have you help me close this big deal that we're working on. And so he goes with her to her family's house, and they make this deal where if he gets to come with her to her parents' house for Christmas, he has to give her a raise and all this different stuff, and he agrees. And basically they go home and they decide to fake date in front of her family. And things get a little bit spicy, and of course there's the only one bed trope because her mom thinks that they're dating, and the mistletoe comes out and things get a little zesty. And it sounds really, really fun. I'm really excited to see what happens with this. It sounds like this boss guy is very wealthy and a little domineering, and the synopsis says that he always gets what he wants, and it sounds like this year for Christmas she's at the top of his list. And it just sounds really, really fun. It sounds like it's going to be full of drama. And then the next one I wanted to recommend is called A Little Magic. So this is one I've been seeing around on Instagram a lot lately, and it's following this woman named Alea, and she basically fled her hometown like 7 years ago, and she has now come back for the holidays, and she's really hoping she doesn't see anybody from her past, but of course that doesn't work out, and she ends up getting stuck in this blizzard, and she has to take shelter at this cabin. And the owner of this cabin, wouldn't you know, is her first love, who is also her brother's best friend, named Theo. And he is a competitive hockey player, and it sounds like he has been pining for her for a very long time, and they end up getting snowed in at this cabin together, and it looks really, really cute. And then the next one I have is Lovelight Farms. So I feel like this is one that everybody and their brother's cat read last year during Christmas, except I haven't read it yet. And it's been one that's been like burning a hole in my TBR for ages. And it's about these two people in this small town, and I think one of them owns a Christmas tree farm, and they are trying to keep the Christmas farm from shutting down, and so I think they have to take place in some sort of like competition, and there's a fake dating element to it, and it looks really, really cute. And the next one I wanted to recommend is called Dipped in Holly. So this is a very spicy Christmas novella, and I believe it's about a woman who just got dumped, and it's like the week before Christmas, and her man dumps her in public, and she's at this like slutty bar, and so she leaves to go to the bathroom after he breaks up with her and like storms out, and she goes to the bathroom and she's just like breaking down, like sobbing in the bathroom, and this guy comes into the women's restroom, and his name is Nick, and he sees her completely falling apart, and I think they end up having some kind of relationship, and he tries to make her feel better, and I think they end up having like a holiday hookup relationship situation, and it sounds really interesting. I've heard good things about this one. There's also another one in the series that's set in like February during Valentine's Day, and so I think these ones would both be good recommendations for the winter season. And the next one I wanted to recommend is called Season of Love. So this is one that I saw at Barnes & Noble last Christmas when I was shopping for like Christmas rom-coms and stuff. And I saw it and it looked super cute and it had a really good cover, and I've been regretting not buying it for like a whole year. It's a story about two women who are in this small town, and one of them just inherited a Christmas tree farm from their family member who just passed away, and so they come to the small town trying to like figure out what's going on with this family business, and it sounds like the Christmas tree farm is like in danger of going under, and so they're trying to work on it and like keep the business afloat. And I think they end up having to pair up with this other woman in the town to try and like make ends meet with this business. And I think it's kind of like a hate to love situation, and it's a sapphic Christmas romance, which I thought was really cute. And I think there's also some like Jewish elements to this as well. I'm not totally sure what the vibe is because the synopsis doesn't say, but they have a Christmas tree farm, but there's also a lot of like Hanukkah imagery on the cover, so I'm excited about that. And then the next one I wanted to recommend is called Emergency Contact, and this is one that's been on my TBR for a while, but I just haven't picked it up because I haven't been able to find a copy anywhere. But it's following this woman who's an ambitious New York attorney, and she gets diagnosed with a concussion. It has to be monitored for 48 hours to make sure it doesn't get worse, but she didn't update her emergency contact, and so they call her ex-husband, and since she can't be left alone, he has to travel with her to go home for the holidays. And so their plane gets kind of derailed because there's a blizzard happening, and they end up having all these misadventures around Christmas time, and I think they end up getting back together, so it's like a serious second chance romance situation. And I just thought that was a really interesting premise, and I think it'd be perfect for the holidays. So those are all of the winter romances I wanted to recommend to you. Let me know in the comments if you have any winter book recommendations that you think I would like, because I would love to know. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye!